Networking and marketing made simple is for you, the business owner who has a product, a service, or a message that you believe in. My name is Scott Aaron, and each week we'll take a behind-the-scenes look into the real-world marketing and networking tactics and strategies for getting what you have in front of you to a lot more people. Thanks for spending time with me, and now let's get started. Super excited for you to hear today's amazing episode. But before I jump into that, I have so many people that reach out to me and ask, how do I start a podcast? What do I need to do? And what you guys listen to, wherever you're listening to this from, if you haven't heard about Anchor by Spotify, in my opinion, it is the easiest way to make a podcast. It's one of those things where I jumped into it because it has everything that I needed in one place. And that's what I loved about it. The tools that allow you to record and then edit your podcast from your phone or your computer, which is so accessible. But also, when you actually host your podcast on Anchor like I do, you can distribute that podcast on all the listening platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, all the different big ones that people are listening to. It's all from here. And it's everything that you need to make a podcast in one place. And the other great thing is, and why I always suggest it to people, it's absolutely free. And this is the easiest thing to do. All you have to do is download the Anchor app on Apple or on your Android, or go to anchor.fm. And that's how you get started. It's that simple. So if you have a message, if you have something really important you want to share, getting your podcast out on the anchor.fm platform will get you there. And not even will get you there, you'll be amazed at what could happen. So enjoy today's episode. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode. And this is another dual episode. So I have somebody with me.
Hello.
So Nancy and I have been doing these dual episodes for a couple of reasons. Number one, sometimes what Nancy and I speak on and about overlaps. So why not kill two birds with one stone? And instead of just doing two separate episodes, let's just have a nice conversation together. And number two, it's fun actually doing these dual episodes. It's a chance for Nancy and I to talk about certain things and obviously plug in. And as you saw in the description of this episode, we're going to be going over 3 tips to create consistent content, because Nancy and I have been teaching on this topic now for well over 2 years, running multiple workshops around this. And some people are getting it and progressing forward, but there's a lot of people that are still, I wouldn't say confused on the topic, just kind of stuck in where they actually have to begin with this. So what Nancy and I wanted to do today is really give you the 3 steps to getting clear on how to create that consistent content. So Nancy, I'm going to turn it to you so we can dive into tip number 1.
Sure. So of course, this is one of my favorite topics because so many people come to us and come to me and, they're overwhelmed with social media and creating content and everything. So we like to keep it simple. So tip number 1, whenever it comes to really creating content and being consistent, is think of your 3 to 5 content buckets. Okay.
Now, Nancy, what's a content bucket?
Exactly, right? So some of you are like, oh, of course, I have mine. And then others may be wondering what the heck that is. So content buckets, in other words, you can refer to them. They could be called your zones of genius, right? They could be 3 to 5 just topics, right, that you alternate through and around in your content that relate back to what it is that you do. So content buckets are this amazing kind of structure you can put to creating your content that really takes I don't even know. I feel like it's a sigh of relief. It takes a little stress off of trying to create tons of content and things like that. So anyway, an idea of what a content bucket is, and I want you guys to keep in mind that there's no perfect science to this, right? You can have a content bucket that maybe no one else has, and that's absolutely fine. So anyway, so some examples of content buckets. So for example, I like to teach on personal branding. I work with clients and specifically, obviously help people repurpose and do content creation. So a few of my content buckets are obviously number one, social media. Okay. So in that bucket, right, that overall topic, I have a million different individual things that I can talk about, right? So it could be social media updates. It could be the newest trends with social media. It could be specific around LinkedIn. It could be specific around Instagram. Could be tips how to create content. So you can see how just putting that bucket there, it gives me a lot to work with. But it also gives me that structure where, okay, I can come up with a million different ideas, right, for individual pieces of content, whether it be video or, articles that I'm writing. But within that content bucket, I've got kind of an overall theme. Now, another bucket that I actually talk about as well is actually mindset. Now, you might be wondering, well, wait a second, don't you just do social media, marketing and whatever? Well, here's the thing. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, and mindset is so incredibly important. So I also do talk about mindset. Of course, I relate it back to my business as well, and how this all pertains. But there are tons of things that you can talk about under mindset, showing up on camera, not having imposter syndrome, limiting beliefs, getting yourself out there, actually creating content and getting out there on the internet. So you can see how, again, mindset is another one of my content buckets. Now, a third content bucket, I mentioned it, I train on personal branding, right? I'm actually getting ready to release my book in the next few months, and it's all about how to build your personal brand on social media. So I talk about all things personal brand under that content bucket. I talk about how to build your personal brand. I talk about what a personal brand is, and then I share tips, obviously, all within that bucket. So again, as humans, we naturally love to organize things, right? We are kind of creatures of habit, and when we can actually put something in some kind of organized structure, it usually appeals to us. And I'm definitely one of those types of people who I really like to have some structure, and especially when it comes to content creation, rather than, what do you call it, Scott? Just kind of doing whatever, spraying and praying.
Yeah, well, throwing spaghetti at the wall, like spraying and praying. Yeah.
Yeah. So, rather than do that, let's actually set up, some structure to it. Now, I often get the question when it comes to content buckets, well, can I change my content buckets? Yes. You're not married to them. Okay. You can change them. Let's say you're launching a new and different product and you decide that entire month you want to focus on one particular topic. Awesome. Let's say, you are switching things around a little bit. You no longer want to talk about mindset. You want to talk about some other things. So really the sky's the limit, but within you, what it is that you do in your industry, I really want you to take a few minutes, right? I love to use my timer. In fact, right next to my desk, I have my little Pomodoro timer, which I usually set it for about 20 minutes. Okay. So give yourself a time limit and set a timer for about 20 minutes and think about your industry, right? Think about what your audience might be interested in. Think about problems that you can solve. Think about the questions that you often get when people want to work with you. So that's a good place to start when you're kind of thinking of topics to talk about. In fact, if you post often on LinkedIn, which obviously, I know Scott, obviously leads with LinkedIn and most of his clients do, think about industry highlights and industry updates. So even if you had a content bucket, just that is your industry, think about all the wonderful things that you can talk about. Okay. So definitely, like I said, take the 20 minutes. Come up with your content buckets. In fact, you might even do it in 5, but put some limits on there and come up with 3 to 5 that you can start coming up with different content ideas under.
Now, yeah. So now tip number 2, we're going to kind of get right to it, is once you choose your content buckets. So for me, as an example, my content buckets are LinkedIn education, behind the scenes of what's going on in life and in business, and motivation/inspiration. Once I define what those content buckets are, now I can decide how I want to fill those content buckets with a pillar piece of content. Now, what is a pillar piece of content? Just to kind of not confuse anyone, a pillar piece of content is a way to create content which can then be repurposed at a later date. So, if you were to think about the three or four main ways to create a pillar piece of content, number one, blog posts. So, there's a lot of people out there that have a blog. You may not, or maybe you're writing LinkedIn articles or newsletters where that long form piece of content that obviously goes under the umbrella of your content buckets that can be broken down into smaller pieces, or what Nancy and I call micro pieces of content. Another form of pillar content is podcasting, which you're listening to right now, because Nancy and I can take this podcast episode. We can hand it over to our team, or if you do it yourself, that's fine as well. And they can break it down, or you can break it down into quote tiles, or maybe you want to transcribe this and use it as a newsletter or an article. And the third, and I would say most common form, or in my humbled opinion, and Nancy can share her thoughts, the easiest piece of pillar content that can be repurposed is video. And you guys know I've been doing video for close to 10 years now. I love it, whether it's long form video or short form video. Nancy and I always suggest 2 to 4 minutes of your video in a specific area of expertise, your content bucket. That pillar piece of content can be broken down into so many different types of things. So now that you've defined your content buckets, you want to fill those content buckets with pillar content. And that pillar content, again, could either be a blog or newsletter or article, long form. It could be a podcast, which is an auditory version of your content, which then can be broken down into written content or even video content if you happen to be recording this on video, as Nancy and I are. Or third would be video content, which then can be broken down into long form written content or into miniature quote tiles, extracting that from what you spoke about. So, again, the first step is defining those content buckets. And then the second step is making sure that you're choosing an avenue of creating pillar content where you can fill those content buckets with multiple pieces. Now, that's the second tip, but I want to turn it back over to Nancy to talk about the third and final tip, because now that you've defined your content buckets, now that you have chosen your avenue of how you're going to create that pillar content, whether it be long form, newsletter, article, blog, auditory as in podcasting, or visual and auditory being video. Now you want to take those and create those micro pieces of content, which are called obviously repurposing pieces of content. So, Nancy, talk about the power of choosing that pillar piece of content and then the ability you have to repurpose into smaller or micro pieces of content.
Yeah, so repurposing is just one of my favorite things in the entire world. Just because, again, I love to work smarter, not harder. And the other thing is, too, is I can't tell you how incredibly important it is, just as Scott said, to create a long form piece of content. Now, of course, there's different ways that you can create that. As he mentioned, you could do podcasts, could do blogs, articles, whatever it is. But I kind of want to take you on this journey, right? So step 3 is actually repurposing that. And I want to show you or kind of tell you, right, what that would look like. So let's say one of my content buckets is social media. And I decide underneath that topic, my audience really seems to want to know more about Instagram. Okay. Let's just say it's kind of the hubbub in the groups, or that you're kind of hearing a lot of people are asking that question. So I can go ahead and let's say write an article about 3 tips how to get started on Instagram. Now, this write up, this article could be a 3 to 5 paragraph. I mean, there's no specifics, guys. This is your business, right? It's not like someone's going to come in and go, hey, you didn't meet the requirements of XYZ. The cool thing about this is you are the thought leader. You are the creator. This is your created content. Okay. And the neat thing too about taking the time to do this, because I know a lot of you are probably on the other side thinking, oh, you want me to what? Right? Like 3 to 5 paragraphs. I'm not back in school. No, it's so amazing because you sitting down and actually blocking out time to write that pillar content is going to be so impactful. Not just because you can use it later in so many other things. In fact, most of my book, is content that I've written previously. But for this next reason, right? And again, step number 3 was repurposing. So now that I wrote that 3 to 5 paragraphs or more, 3 tips on how to get started on Instagram, I can actually repurpose that content. When I say repurpose, I can pull from it to make multiple pieces of content. Okay. And what I usually tell people is when you write your pillar content, or let's say you do your video or whatever, sometimes it's fun to actually open up with a quote. It could be something related. So let's say there's a quote about Instagram. Did you know there's 10 million, billion amazing, people on Instagram today, dash and then cite the source. You could open up with a quote because it's a fun way to just plain take that quote. And now that could be its own graphic, right? You see quote graphics all the time, but boom, there you go. There's one piece of content right there to support your theme for the week. Now, the other thing that you can do is, let's say you pull out one general topic. So maybe one of the tips to get started on Instagram was, first tip was to actually, create your profile and ways to optimize your profile. Boom, you could create just a post with a little graphic on, how to optimize your profile, or maybe with some tips. Now, the other question, because I don't want you guys to get stuck or hung up on, do I need to just use this as the content for the whole week, or can I use different content buckets? You can do whatever you'd like. So 2 ways that you can do this is, number 1, you can use it as your leader for the week, which I call, right? You can theme out your entire week with that content. So again, you've got your article, the 3 tips how to get started on Instagram. You could shoot a video about the very same thing. Again, people need to see things quite a few times. It's a marketing rule of thumb in order for it to sink in. And then 3, you can create a graphic or even a poll question, or, something relating to that. Now, that's one way to do it. The other way to do it is if you decide, what, I've got 3 content buckets I absolutely love, and I kind of want to mix in my content. And maybe on Mondays, I want to talk about social media, and Wednesdays, I want to talk about, personal branding. And on Fridays, I want to talk about, whatever, like mindset. You can do that. If that helps you structure it and that helps you break down content, absolutely. But we do recommend picking one of those topics to really create that longer form, because those are great things to create video from, to, make longer. You can make a newsletter or an article and do other things with. So anyway, it's something that we're super passionate about. It's really helped create such an awesome routine, and helped even us, and our clients stay consistent. But this is, again, this is what we've been teaching for the last few years, and, it's what works.
Yeah. So again, part of why we wanted to jump on and obviously do this dual episode is because everyone asks us all the time, how do you and Nancy remain so consistent with creating content on social media? And people think that we have to create 30 different pieces of content a week. It's actually not true. We create a pillar piece or a theme of the week, and that gets spread across all of the different social media channels that we're on. So leading into this, so if you're, we've piqued your interest, or we have the wheels turning in your head right now, we're actually very excited to announce that Nancy and I decided to do for the first time a simple content creation workshop. Now, some of you may have done one of our content creation workshops before, but the difference between this one and other ones is, number 1, we are aware that the most valuable commodity we have to offer someone or receive from someone is their time. And, in the very beginning of this, we actually used to do 5-day workshops around this, where it again, we got the point across, but it was a lot of time to have people to commit to learning this. And then eventually we cut it down in half to 3 days. But we decided to do something really special this time. And what we decided to do was actually a 1-day, 90-minute workshop. Now, we call it a workshop or slash masterclass because we're going to be teaching you the whole process of what it means to have a content bucket, and we're going to give you examples, and you're going to share them back with us live during this masterclass slash workshop. But we're also going to go over the key pillar content. We're actually going to focus on video because, in our opinions, for people that are just starting out, it's the easiest one to latch on to be able to create more content. And third, we're going to show you the keys to creating micro pieces of content. And we're going to be doing this in this 90-minute workshop where A, you're going to be learning, but B, you're going to be going through the process with us. You get a workbook. We're going to be going back and forth with you. You're going to be using the chat so we can basically coach you through all those things. But as a bonus, as we always do, we love interacting with all of the people that attend our events. We've thrown in a bonus second day. It's not a training day. It's actually a Q&A day. So we're doing a 90-minute masterclass on October 24th. It's from 8 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. EDT. And we're going to be teaching you the whole steps that you need to go through to, define your content buckets, to choose your pillar piece of content, meaning a video, and then how to repurpose it into multiple pieces of micro content. And then on day 2, which is Tuesday, we're still meeting at 8 o'clock, but it's a 60-minute bonus Q&A session with myself and Nancy, where you can ask us any questions that relate to your content bucket. Maybe you're struggling with creating a video, or maybe you're not fully grasping how to break that down and get things into micro pieces of content so you can get them scheduled across multiple platforms. So in the description of this episode on our podcast is going to be a link to register. It's completely free. Again, it's not going to require a lot of time. It's 90 minutes. It's from 8 to 9:30 p.m. EDT, live and recorded. Day 2 is on Tuesday. That's October 25th, 60-minute Q&A session, and the replays are available of both the 90-minute masterclass and the 60-minute Q&A until that Sunday, which is October 30th, the day before Halloween. So you have all week to go back and watch it. But the wonderful thing about this specific workshop, A, it's at the end of the year, so obviously this is going to set you in the right path. But B, it's also going to teach you how to do this in a streamlined way in 90 minutes. Just imagine just an hour and a half of your time learning our strategy and our technique to do all of this. So we just want to A, say thank you so much for joining us on this episode today. And B, we would love to see you in this workshop. So everyone, please enjoy the rest of your days. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much again for checking out today's episode. And if you are listening through iTunes, Spotify, wherever you are, please leave me a rating and review. Let me know what you loved, what you would like to see improved, or ideas you have for future episodes. And if you are interested in taking your business to the next level, don't hesitate to go to my website, www.scottaaron.net, where you can schedule a free discovery call with me, where I can learn more about you, your business, what you're struggling with, and how we can work together. And don't forget to check out my wife, Nancy, and mine, our free community on Facebook called LinkedIn Leads for Life. We would love to see you in there. Have a great rest of your day. And thank you, everyone, for your support. Grateful for each and every one of you.